DC has some of the most unhinged fan theories in all of fiction, from psychological horror hiding in plain sight to cosmic conspiracies that actually turned out to be canon. Today, I'm breaking down the craziest DC theories ever created and everything that makes them work, starting with one that completely ruins Batman for you. Batman is insane. This is probably the most psychologically disturbing Batman theory ever created, and the worst part is how much sense it makes. The idea is simple. Young Bruce Wayne witnesses his parents' murder, suffers a complete psychological break, and gets committed to Arkham Asylum, where he never leaves. Everything we know about Batman, the cape, the gadgets, the crusade, all of it is a fantasy constructed by a deeply traumatized child who never recovered. Before you dismiss it, hear me out. Every major Batman villain maps perfectly onto a facet of Bruce's fractured psyche. Scarecrow is his own weaponization of fear turned inside out. Catwoman represents his moral ambiguity. Victor Ziyech is Bruce's addiction to violence, stripped of all heroic justification, which is, not ideal. Mr. Freeze, a man literally frozen in grief over a loved one he can't save, mirrors Bruce's inability to move past his parents' death. And the Mad Hatter, a man who retreats entirely into fantasy rather than face reality, that's basically the thesis statement of the whole theory. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. Every time the Joker tells Batman they're the same, every time a villain questions Bruce's sanity, this theory reframes those moments as real clinicians trying to reach a patient who won't acknowledge his illness. The doctors become the villains in Bruce's mind because the truth is the one thing he can't face. Now, is there canonical support for any of this? Absolutely not. Zero. DC has never hinted that Bruce is a patient, but it works purely as an interpretive lens that collapses all the symbolic mirroring between Batman and his rogues into fully interiorized dream logic. Gotham stops being a city and becomes a mind. The war on crime stops being a crusade and becomes a symptom. But if you think reimagining Batman's psychology is dark, wait until you hear the theory about where the Joker actually came from, because it involves someone very close to Bruce. The Joker is a failed Robin. Jason Todd becomes Robin after getting caught stealing tires off the Batmobile. Not from a circus like Dick Grayson, but from Crime Alley, where a starving street kid thought jacking wheels off a vigilante's car was a solid survival strategy. Bruce saw something in that recklessness and took him in. Years later, the Joker beat Jason to death with a crowbar in Ethiopia, then blew up the building. Fans literally voted for this to happen via a 900 number. The margin was 72 votes. 72 people killed a child. Jason eventually came back from the dead, took up the mantle of the Red Hood, the exact criminal identity the Joker used before he became the Joker, and waged a lethal war on crime that Batman refused to fight. He became what his murderer used to be. Same costume, same name, to prove Batman's methods failed. So when the DCEU dropped hints that their Joker might actually be a former Robin, fans lost their minds. A vandalized Robin suit appears in Batman vs Superman with jokes. "On You Batman" spray-painted across the chest. Leto's Joker has scars that some fans matched to damage on that suit. The age gap between Affleck's older Batman and Leto's younger Joker fit the timeline of a sidekick gone wrong. It became an entire cottage industry of frame-by-frame analysis. But here's the thing. The theory undermines everything the Joker is supposed to represent. The Joker works because he's unknowable chaos. No fixed origin, no real name, no backstory that fully explains him. Turning him into Jason Todd collapses that into a family tragedy, with a clear cause and a timeline you can follow. It makes the Joker explicable. Explicable isn't scary. Jason already carries more narrative weight than most characters can handle. He's the murdered child soldier whose death haunts Batman for decades. Folding him into the Joker doesn't add to either character. It reduces both. Two distinct tragedies become one, and neither is better for it. What the theory does capture is how Batman's family and enemies are tangled in cycles of failure. Jason was failed by Bruce, tortured by the Joker, resurrected into a world that moved on without him. The Red Hood is already a form of the Joker's legacy, a living reminder that Batman's greatest enemy isn't just a maniac in clown makeup, but the inevitable consequence of turning broken children into soldiers. But if you think one ghost of a dead Robin is disturbing, wait until you hear about the theory that Alfred Pennyworth, the man who raised Bruce Wayne, is secretly the Joker himself. Alfred Pennyworth is the real Joker. Alfred Pennyworth is either the most loyal father figure in comics history or the architect of Batman's entire psychological prison. And before you roll your eyes, hear me out. The theory goes like this. Alfred has near omniscient access to every aspect of Batman's operations. He maintains the Batcave, patches Bruce's wounds, monitors communications, and knows every weakness and every pressure point. That means he's uniquely positioned to design a campaign of theatrical opposition that keeps Bruce dependent and locked in an endless war he can never win. The Joker's preternatural insight into Batman's mind isn't supernatural, it's paternal, and here's where it gets weird. Alfred's canonical history is suspiciously perfect for this role. He's been a British intelligence officer, a field medic, a retired Shakespearean actor, and an espionage operative. The acting background explains the Joker's theatricality. The wartime intelligence experience gives him familiarity with psychological operations, and the kind of mind games that break people through fear. The man literally knows how to weaponize trauma. Matter of fact, Alfred was temporarily transformed into a villain called the Outsider due to amnesia and manipulation, proving he can become a genuine threat when circumstances align. For a character who's supposed to be the stable moral anchor of Batman's world, Alfred is suspiciously liminal. The evidence gets even darker. Batman 3 Jokers reveals that the Joker once had a wife who faked her death and entered witness protection, and that Batman has known the Joker's real identity for years, but kept it secret. In some fan versions of this theory, that secret identity is Alfred's own former life, with Bruce's silence functioning as both complicity and denial. Bruce knows his father figure is his greatest enemy and chooses to let it continue because the alternative would shatter him completely. Canonical support for this is extremely thin. DC has never presented Alfred as the Joker in a serious story. The theory functions primarily as a thought experiment about trust and manipulation. What if the person you rely on most to heal you is also the one ensuring you never stop bleeding? But if you think one twisted surrogate parent is disturbing, wait until you hear about the goddess who was literally forged as a divine weapon to slaughter her own father. Wonder Woman is a weapon of war. Here's a question nobody wants to sit with for too long. Can something specifically designed to kill ever truly choose peace? Because when you look at Wonder Woman's origin, her arsenal, and her divine enhancements, the answer gets uncomfortable real fast. Let's start with the Amazons. In the post-1987 comics, they're reincarnated souls of women murdered by men throughout history, sculpted from clay, and blessed by 5 Olympian goddesses with immortality, superhuman strength, and combat prowess. Their entire civilization is a response to violence. They exist because violence existed first, but the DCEU makes the quiet part loud. Zeus creates the Amazons as a failsafe against his own son, Ares. They're not peacekeepers. They're a contingency plan. And Diana? She's told the God Killer is a sword. Turns out, no, she is the God Killer, a living weapon forged by divine parentage to destroy a god of war, which is, not exactly ambassador material. Then there's her gear. The lasso of truth sounds nice until you realize it's a coercive interrogation tool that makes lying physically impossible. That's not diplomacy. That's enhanced interrogation with a golden aesthetic. Her shield tanks machine gun fire. The sword of Athena sliced off Doomsday's arm. Her bracelets can deflect Darkseid's Omega beams. Every item she carries is optimized for one thing, and it's not conversation. On top of the hardware, Diana is stacked with divine buffs like a character someone min-maxed in a tabletop RPG. Demeter grants resilience to radiation and extreme environments. Hermes gives her hypersonic flight fast enough to keep pace with Superman. She's not a warrior who happens to have good equipment. She's a purpose-built battlefield instrument who happens to also believe in love. And that's the tension. Wonder Woman's entire identity is built on the paradox of a peace ambassador fundamentally optimized for war. Her origin is rooted in violence. Her weapons enforce truth through force. Her body was blessed by gods specifically to kill another god. Every element of who she is points toward destruction, and yet she chooses compassion. The theory doesn't resolve that contradiction, it just forces you to stare at it. DC has never given us a definitive answer. They just keep handing her bigger swords. But if a divine weapon choosing peace sounds like a paradox, wait until you hear about a government conspiracy that says your favorite superheroes were never accidents at all. The Superman theory. Here's one that's not even a fan theory. This is an actual in-universe conspiracy that the DC world takes dead seriously. And the worst part is, it's partially true. In Doomsday Clock, governments around the world start fixating on a genuinely uncomfortable statistic. Roughly 97% of Earth's known metahumans are American, not 60%, not 75, 97. The resulting conspiracy alleges that the US government has been secretly manufacturing metahumans for decades, assigning some as heroes and others as villains in a massive controlled spectacle designed to maintain American global dominance, which is, not ideal for international relations. DC even published a promotional Daily Planet article written in-universe, arguing that the costumed theatricality of superheroes could be a smokescreen obscuring their true status as government assets. The capes, the names, the dramatic origin stories, all potentially just branding for state-sponsored weapons programs. And honestly, when you you lay it out like that, it sounds way less crazy than it should. Here's where it gets complicated. The theory is partially confirmed. Firestorm, always presented as the result of a random nuclear accident fusing Ronnie Raymond with physicist Martin Stein, gets retconned as a deliberate experiment. Stein specifically selected Ronnie based on his psychological profile. The Firestorm Matrix was a weaponized fusion of human bodies and atomic power, tied to U.S. strategic calculations about metahuman deterrence. So the conspiracy theorists were right about at least one hero. Great, add that to the list. And then Firestorm accidentally transmutes a crowd of Russian civilians in Moscow into glass. Just turns living, breathing people into glass statues, which is basically the nightmare scenario the Superman theory warned about, American-controlled metahumans functioning as walking nuclear events on foreign soil. But here's the thing, we know tons of metahuman origins don't fit the conspiracy at all. Wonder Woman is a literal goddess, Captain Cold built his own tech in a garage, Shazam got his powers from an ancient wizard, Booster Gold is a time traveler from the future. The Superman theory is a partial truth wrapped in exaggeration and fear, which is exactly how the best real-world conspiracy theories work. That's what makes it so effective. It answers a question fans have asked for decades. Why are so many superheroes American? By making that question suspicious in-universe. The Firestorm retcon proves that at least some people in power would absolutely try to manufacture metahumans. Whether they succeeded with everyone else is the part nobody can agree on. But if a government conspiracy about manufacturing superhumans sounds wild, wait until you hear about the speedster who might literally be his own power source. The Flash is the Speed Force. Most superhero origin stories go like this. Guy gets powers from a thing, guy uses powers, the end. Barry Allen's origin story decided to break causality itself, because according to one of DC's most controversial retcons, Barry didn't just tap into the Speed Force, he created it. The thing that gave him his powers only exists because he used his powers, which is, not ideal for anyone who likes logic. The Speed Force first shows up as a named concept in 1994, during Wally West's run as The Flash. Max Mercury describes it as an extra-dimensional field of pure kinetic energy that touches every dimension, every universe, every era. It's the source of every speedster's power. It's also where speedsters go when they die, a cosmic retirement home made of lightning. Cool. But then Jeff Johns' Flash. Rebirth drops in 2009 and rewrites the entire metaphysics. Turns out, Barry didn't just access the Speed Force when that lightning bolt hit him. He generated it. The force radiated through time in every direction, backward and forward, empowering speedsters who existed centuries before Barry was even born. Jay Garrick, Max Mercury, Johnny Quick, all retroactively powered by a guy who hadn't been born yet. Barry didn't just become the Flash. He became the reason speed exists. And it gets weirder. The Speed Force doesn't just power people, it collects them. It functions as a literal afterlife for speedsters. And if you overstay your welcome in the land of the living, the Black Flash comes for you. A skeletal, decayed version of the Flash that serves as Death's personal avatar for speedsters. One touch, instant death. So the Speed Force gives you life, gives you power, and then sends its own skeleton wearing your costume to kill you. Heartwarming stuff. The Arrowverse took this further by making the Speed Force fully sentient. It manifests as Barry's dead mother, talks to him, comforts him, and at one point, literally imprisons him. When the Speed Force dies due to Barry's reckless time travel, the team resurrects it using residual energy living inside Iris. The source of all motion in the universe was brought back to life using leftover energy from Barry's wife. I don't know what to tell you. So is Barry Allen the Speed Force? Current canon says no. But when you create the thing that empowers you, when your death sends you into it, and your life generates it, the line between user and source gets real blurry, real fast. But if you think a man becoming synonymous with a cosmic force is reality-breaking, wait until you hear about the time a Watchmen character literally rewrote DC's entire timeline. The Watchmen created the New 52. Here's the thing about the New 52. On the surface, it has a perfectly clean explanation. Barry Allen goes back in time, prevents his mother's murder, accidentally creates the Flashpoint timeline, and when he tries to fix it, the universe that comes back is younger, leaner, missing about 10 years of history, key relationships, and entire legacy heroes. But it was never that simple, because in 2016, DC Universe Rebirth #1 dropped a bombshell. Some outside force had actively stolen time from the DC heroes. Not lost, stolen. Ripped out of the timeline like pages torn from a book. And the hint they left behind? A blood-stained smiley face button, which is, not subtle. Doomsday Clock confirmed everything. After leaving his own reality at the end of Watchmen, John Osterman, Dr. Manhattan, traveled to the DC Universe and started experimenting with it. He removed elements, rearranged others, universe, dissolved relationships. And when Barry's Flashpoint mess cracked the timeline wide open, Manhattan saw his opportunity and took it, compressing 10 years of history into nothing. The specifics are genuinely unsettling. Manhattan nudged a lantern away from Alan Scott's hand, preventing him from ever becoming the Golden Age Green Lantern. One small gesture, and that single act erased the entire Justice Society from the timeline. Decades of legacy heroes, gone because a god from another universe moved a lamp 6 inches to the left. But Manhattan wasn't acting entirely on his own. The Great Darkness, this ancient cosmic entity, had been subtly influencing him the entire time, pushing him to weaken Earth-Zero's defenders. What makes this truly wild is the metatextual layer. Manhattan witnessed the creation of the multiverse itself, and he attributed it to the moment Barry Allen was struck by lightning. The timeline keeps rebooting around Superman as the metaverse's central figure, and that's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Manhattan isn't just a character in this story. He's a stand-in for DC editorial, moving pieces around, erasing relationships that don't sell, compressing history because someone in a boardroom decided younger heroes test better with focus groups. The New 52 wasn't just a reboot. It was a publishing initiative given a fictional scapegoat, a literal god who could take the blame for decisions made by real people in real offices. The fact that Doomsday Clock eventually has Manhattan restore everything functions almost like an apology. DC saying, yeah, we went too far, here's your legacy back. Except they put it in Manhattan's mouth instead of their own. So yes, a character created by Alan Moore to critique superhero power fantasies ended up being used to justify an entire era of editorial decisions. I don't know what to tell you, but if a god editing your timeline sounds bad, wait until you hear about the equation that can enslave your mind through a screen, because that one hits a little too close to home. The anti-life equation is social media. Darkseid's anti-life equation is one of the most terrifying forces in DC cosmology. But here's the thing, it's not just a cosmic horror weapon from the comics. It's uncomfortably close to what's happening on your phone right now. The equation is a transcendental mathematical formula that dominates the will of any sentient being. In Final Crisis, Darkseid broadcasts the equation through television, the internet, and prismatic towers, infecting billions and turning them into helmeted justifiers who spread the signal further. Oracle narrowly escapes by shutting down the world's computer networks entirely, sacrificing the internet to prevent total psychic enslavement. The only antidotes are the New Genesis Freedom Hieroglyph and emotionally resonant acts of love and courage. That's the canonical version. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. The equation's ingredients map perfectly onto algorithmically curated platforms. That's not a cosmic formula. That's the engagement loop of social media. Platforms maximize retention by surfacing content that provokes strong negative emotions, isolates users in filter bubbles, and rewards the exact behaviors Darkseid enumerates. The end state isn't conscious allegiance to a tyrant, it's learned helplessness and nihilism. Nothing matters. Hope is naive. Lash out or tune out. Dead internet theory claims much of the web is bot-generated or AI curated to manipulate public opinion. Researchers predict that by the late 2020s, the majority of content will be machine-generated, creating a feedback loop where algorithms train on their own outputs and human voices drown in synthetic noise. When Oracle crashes the global internet to stop the equation, the story implicitly warns that total connectivity without safeguards becomes a vector for existential harm. Darkseid's towers transform citizens into synchronized echo chambers of his will. The difference is that his control is visible, a glowing set of alien glyphs you can see and resist. Our version has no face, no name, just invisible logic optimized to harvest attention through the exact cocktail of shame and despair the equation weaponizes. It's not that Twitter is literally Darkseid's broadcast tower. It's that the technologies meant to connect us are optimized for precisely what anti-life does, proving through lived experience that life is pointless, hope is for fools. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.